The first time Justina's unborn baby spoke, it was not in a dream. It was not in a prayer. It was not inside one of those strange pregnancy moods people blamed on hormones. It happened at midnight, while Justina stood barefoot behind the polished mahogany door of her father-in-law's private study, listening to the people she called family decide her future like she was a bad business investment. Inside the room, her mother-in-law's voice was sharp enough to cut glass.
Emeka, let us stop pretending. The scan has confirmed it. She is carrying a girl.
Justina held her swollen belly with both hands. Her husband did not answer immediately. That silence wounded her more than any insult. Then her father-in-law, Chief Obinna Okorie, the powerful real estate king whose name opened doors in Lagos, lowered his voice and said,
If Justina gives birth to that girl as the first grandchild of this family,
everything my father built will leave this house.
The land documents, the oil shares, the company accounts, the estates in Lekki, Asaba, Abuja, all of it will go.
Justina's breath caught in her throat. A baby girl. That was her crime. Not adultery. Not stealing. Not disrespectful. Just a daughter growing quietly inside her. Her mother-in-law hissed. Then there are only two choices.
She removes it, or she signs the divorce papers before the child is born.
Emeka is still young. He can marry a woman who knows how to bring a son.
Justina felt the corridor tilt beneath her feet. The man she had loved, the man who kissed her forehead every morning and called her my peace, finally spoke. And his voice was tired.
We will talk to her tomorrow.
Not, no, Mama. Not, that is my wife. Not, that is my child. Only, we will talk to her tomorrow. Justina staggered backward, one palm pressed against her mouth to trap the cry rising from her chest. Then, from inside her womb, a small, calm voice whispered,
Mommy, don't cry.
Justina froze. The corridor was empty. The house was silent. The voice came again, soft but clear.
They are not afraid of me because I am a girl. They are afraid because their stolen wealth has recognized its owner.
Justina's hand trembled against her belly.
Who are you?
She whispered. And the unborn child answered,
I am Princess Nneka, the blessing they buried, the wealth they betrayed.
And Mommy, by the time I am born, those who rejected us will beg to stand at our gate.
For a moment, Justina could not move. Her knees locked. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Even the air in the corridor seemed to hold its breath with her. The central air conditioner hummed softly above her head, but sweat still gathered under her nightgown. She looked left. She looked right. Nobody. The long upstairs corridor of the Okorie mansion was empty, except for expensive paintings, golden wall lamps, and silence that suddenly felt too alive.
Jesus?
She whispered. Inside the study, her in-laws were still talking, but their voices now sounded far away, as if water had covered Justina's ears. Her hand remained on her stomach. The baby moved gently. Not the normal kick she had grown used to in the past few weeks. This one felt like reassurance. Like a tiny hand touching her from the inside.
Mommy, walk away before they open the door,
the voice said again. Justina's eyes widened, as if the baby had seen what she had not yet seen. The handle of the study door turned. Justina quickly stepped back, nearly hitting a tall flower vase beside the wall. She grabbed it before it fell, her heart beating as if someone was pounding a drum in her chest.
Move,
the voice whispered. Justina did not ask another question. She gathered her nightgown and hurried down the corridor, her bare feet making soft sounds on the marble floor. She entered the guest room beside the staircase and closed the door quietly behind her. Only then did she allow herself to breathe. She leaned against the door, shaking. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no, this cannot be happening." The baby gave one small kick. Justina covered her belly with both hands. Are you really talking to me?" There was a pause. Then the voice replied, almost offended.
Mommy, after all I said, you are still asking?
Justina nearly screamed. She slapped one hand over her mouth. The fear was real, but somehow the baby's tone carried such small child confidence that a ridiculous thought crossed Justina's mind. This unborn child had attitude. Justina whispered, breathing hard. "So, I have not even given birth, and my child is already answering me like my mother."
I did not come to this world to be quiet,
the baby said. Justina stared at her belly. If fear had not been squeezing her chest, she might have laughed. But the pain of what she had just heard returned quickly. Her husband, Emeka. Her Emeka. The same man who had stood before the altar 2 years ago with tears in his eyes and promised to choose him in all seasons. The same man who once fought a waiter because the man spoke rudely to her at a restaurant. The same man who rubbed her feet when pregnancy made them swell. Now he had sat in that room while his parents discussed removing their child like an unwanted stain. Justina slid down to the floor. A quiet sob escaped her. "My husband did not defend us," she whispered. The baby became silent. That silence hurt too. After a while, the voice said softly,
He is weak. Weakness can sometimes do more damage than wickedness.
Justina closed her eyes. Those words entered her heart like truth she was not ready to accept. Downstairs, a clock chimed midnight. The Okorie mansion stood in one of those Lagos estates where the gates were higher than some people's houses, and the security men greeted money before they greeted human beings. Everything in the house shone. The chandeliers, the floors, the silver railings, the smiles people wore when visitors came. But that night, Justina understood that some houses were only beautiful outside. Inside, they were full of fear. Before marriage, everyone had told her she was blessed. "Do you know who wants to marry you?" her auntie had asked, dancing in the sitting room like she had already received the bride price herself. Okorie family. My dear, even their dog has better medical care than some human beings. Her mother had smiled with pride. Her friends had called her lucky. Her church women had prayed loudly, some with genuine happiness, others with the kind of jealousy that wore perfume. And truly, Emeka had loved her. Or maybe he had loved her when love was easy. He was handsome in a calm, polished way, not loud, not reckless. He spoke gently and drove carefully. He sent flowers to her office. He called her my peace because according to him, she made his noisy family quiet in his heart. Justina had believed him. Even when his mother, Lady Augusta Okorie, began asking strange questions after the wedding. Your family, do they give birth to more boys or girls? Justina had laughed then, thinking it was ordinary mother-in-law curiosity. My mother had 3 girls and 2 boys, Mommy. Lady Augusta's smile had tightened. God will balance it. Balance what? Justina had wondered. Then came the early pregnancy.
At first, the whole mansion rejoiced. Chief Obina opened champagne. Lady Augusta called 3 prayer groups in one afternoon. Emeka lifted Justina off the floor and spun her around until she begged him to remember she was pregnant, not a bag of rice. But the happiness had slowly changed into pressure. Eat more yams, Lady Augusta would say. It helps male children. Don't sleep too much on your left side, one old auntie advised. You may turn the baby into a girl.
Another cousin brought bitter herbs and said, my friend drank this and gave birth to twin boys. Justina refused the herbs. Lady Augusta did not forgive that refusal. By the 5th month, the family insisted on a scan. Not just a normal hospital scan, they carried her to a private diagnostic center in Victoria Island, where the doctor smiled too much and avoided Justina's eyes after checking the baby. Lady Augusta did not wait. Doctor, talk. Is it a boy? The doctor adjusted his glasses. From what we can see, the baby appears to be female. The room became so quiet that Justina had the paper sheet under her body crackle. Emeka looked away. Lady Augusta held her chest as if someone had announced a funeral. Chief Obina, who had followed them just to be sure, walked out of the room without saying a word. Justina had laughed nervously. A girl is also a blessing now, she said. Nobody answered her. That was 3 days ago. Since then, the mansion had treated her like bad news. The cook stopped asking what she wanted for breakfast. The housekeeper avoided her eyes. Lady Augusta began whispering in corners. Chief Obina stopped calling her daughter. Emeka became too busy, too tired, too distracted. And now she knew why. Divorce or abortion. Her daughter's life had become a family meeting agenda. Justina wiped her tears with the back of her hand. What do they mean by the wealth will leave? She asked the baby. What kind of family loses inheritance because of a girl child?
A guilty one,
The baby replied. Justina swallowed. You said stolen wealth. What did they steal? The room seemed colder. For the first time, the baby did not answer quickly.
Mommy, some truths are not carried by the ear. They must be carried by courage.
Justina frowned through her tears. Please, don't start speaking proverbs inside my stomach. I am already confused. The baby was quiet for 1 second. Then she said,
Sorry.
Justina blinked. The small apology was so unexpected that a soft, broken laugh escaped her mouth. She pressed her hand against her lips, laughing and crying at the same time. She whispered,
God, I am laughing with a baby inside my womb. If I tell anybody now, they will say pregnancy has finally cooked my brain.
Princess Nika said.
Don't tell anybody yet.
Justina fools again.
Princess Eneka. That is what you called yourself.
Yes.
Are you a spirit?
Justina's skin prickled.
I am your child.
But you said you are the blessing they buried.
I am your child, and I am the memory their family tried to kill.
Outside the room, footsteps approached. Justina held her breath. The footsteps stopped near the door. Then a voice called softly. Justina. Emeka. Her whole body stiffened. Justina, are you there? She quickly wiped her face. Yes. The door opened before she could stand. Emeka entered wearing a navy blue robe, his face heavy with worry. For one painful second, he looked like the man she loved. What are you doing here? He asked. I checked our room and you were not there. Justina slowly rose from the floor. I could not sleep. His eyes searched her face. Have you been crying? She looked at him, waiting for him to confess, waiting for him to say, I am sorry you heard us, waiting for him to say, I will never allow them to touch you or our child. But Emeka only sighed. Justina, we need to talk tomorrow. The baby shifted inside her. Justina placed one hand on her belly.
Talk about our future, or your inheritance.
Emeka looked away. That small movement told her everything about our future, he said. Our future? Justina repeated. Or your inheritance? His eyes snapped back to her. For a moment, guilt flashed across his face. So he knew. He knew she had heard. Justina. No, she said quietly. Answer me. Is it about our future or your father's money? Emeka rubbed his forehead.
It is not that simple.
Justina laughed once, but there was no joy in it.
It is very simple. I am carrying your child. Your parents want me to remove her or leave. You sat there and said we will talk tomorrow.
Pain crossed his face.
I was trying to calm them down.
By agreeing with them?
I did not agree.
You did not refuse.
The words landed between them like a slap. Emeka took a step closer. You don't understand what is at stake. Justina stared at him. At stake, she whispered. Your daughter's life is at stake. He flinched. Good, she thought. Let it enter. Emeka lowered his voice. My father believes there is a curse on this family. Then let him go and fight his curse. Why is my womb the battlefield? From inside her, the baby whispered.
Good question, Mommy.
Justina nearly reacted, but she caught herself. Emeka frowned. What? Nothing. He looked at her strangely. Justina, listen to me. Since I was young, I have heard this story. My grandfather warned that if the first grandchild in my father's line is female, the family wealth will collapse. My father has lived his whole life protecting this family from that prophecy. Justina's eyes burned. And nobody thought to ask why a baby girl should carry the punishment for old men's greed? Emeka said nothing. Justina moved closer to him. Tell me the truth. Do you want me to abort this child? His face changed. He opened his mouth, closed it. That hesitation broke the last soft place inside her. Justina nodded slowly. I see. No, wait. No, Emeka. I see clearly. He reached for her hand, but she stepped back. The baby kicked sharply. Emeka noticed. For the first time that night, his eyes dropped to her belly with something like fear. Justina felt it too. A strange warmth spread from the center of her womb through her body. The lights in the guest room flickered once. Emeka looked up. What was that? Justina said nothing. The baby's voice came low and calm.
Ask him if he remembers the statue in his father's study.
Justina's breath caught. What statue? Emeka frowned. What? Justina looked at him carefully. There is a statue in your father's study. A woman holding a golden calabash. Who is she? The color drained from Emeka's face. How do you know about that? Justina's heart began to pound.
Because she had never entered Chief Obina's private study before tonight. She had only stood outside the door. Emeka's voice dropped. Justina, who told you about that statue? The baby whispered.
Tell him the woman has opened her eyes.
Justina swallowed hard. Then she repeated, slowly. The woman has opened her eyes. Emeka staggered back as if she had pushed him. At that exact moment, from inside Chief Obina's study, down the corridor, came a loud crash. Glass shattered. A man shouted. Lady Augusta screamed, Obina! Emeka rushed out of the guest room. Justina stood frozen for only a second before following him, one hand on her belly. The corridor lights flickered again. When they reached the study, Chief Obina was standing near his desk, trembling. Lady Augusta clutched her wrapper with both hands, her eyes wide with terror.
On the floor lay the broken glass case that had always covered the old statue. But the statue itself had not broken. It stood upright on the desk. A dark wooden carving of a beautiful woman holding a calabash. And though Justina had never seen it before, she knew its face. Because the baby inside her womb had the same presence. Powerful, patient, unforgiving. Then Lady Augusta pointed at the statue and whispered,
Her eyes.
Justina looked. The carved woman's eyes, once closed, were now open. And from somewhere deep in the silent mansion, a baby laughed. Nobody slept in the Okorie mansion that night. Not the security men outside the gate who suddenly began hearing baby laughter inside the compound even though no child lived there. Not the cook who crossed herself 3 times after the kitchen lights switched on by themselves. Not Lady Augusta, who sat in the upstairs sitting room with a Bible on her lap, a bottle of anointing oil beside her, and fear sitting on her shoulders like an old woman. And definitely not Chief Obina Okorie. The mighty Chief Obina, the man whose voice could silence contractors, bankers, politicians, and stubborn family members, sat behind his desk staring at the statue of the woman with the golden calabash. The statue's eyes were open, wide open.